would like to hone in on the Declaration of Independence. I was struck by how many times your book returned to it. It has no force of law, but yet it's more than a glorious announcement document. It's been a grounding force for change for an evolving Constitution. How do you see the Declaration of Independence in this way?
So there's an old trope in American history that if you have rights, you rest on the Constitution, and if you want rights, you rest on the Declaration. Because that's exactly right. The Declaration is nothing other than an explanation to the nations of the world why the American rebels were in fact acting properly and why they weren't people who simply should be hanged, as they would have been if the revolution failed. And I always think it's something that I like to emphasize to my students, because of course the way it turned out well for them. Had it gone a different direction, they were not lying when they said, if we don't hang together, we shall all hang separately. Signing their names on that document was literally signing their own death warrants if it didn't go the way that they were hoping. And I certainly have my issues with the founders, and if you ever listen to the podcast Joanne Freeman and I did, there's one in particular that keeps me up at night. But when I think of the courage it took to write your name on that and how easy it would have been not to, and I think about some of the people who represent us today, I feel like we owe the founders the recognition that they at least had the courage of their convictions. And now I've totally forgotten what you asked.
Yeah. Well, all these marginal groups.
Oh, why did I go back to that?
They keep calling on the Declaration of Independence to change the Constitution.
Right. So the reason that I think the Declaration matters so much, and the reason that I talk about it so much, is because, it gave a language to people who wanted rights. And we talk about this declaration, but if you ever do a search, you will find out there are hundreds and hundreds of declarations in this country alone. There are in other countries as well that are based on the Declaration of Independence. Not just Seneca Falls, which is quite obvious, but there's one for labor. Many people have written their own declarations of independence. And I think what it did is it gave a language for marginalized people to argue that they were supporting traditional American values by demanding inclusion in those principles of equality before the law and the right to have a say in their government. And without that language, without the ability to say, as people did from the very beginning, Benjamin Banneker writes to some founder that we don't care about, Thomas Jefferson or someone, and says, those principles that you put in the Declaration of Independence are just ducky, I paraphrase, but why not me? I'm as educated as you are. I'm as smart as you are. I'm contributing all these amazing things to science. Why not me? And there's another wonderful moment in that chapter about Phyllis Wheatley, one of America's first poets, an African-American woman writing to an indigenous minister saying, I love this idea about everybody reaching for freedom, but what about us? We feel the same way. Because it gave people the language to challenge those traditional roles and those religious roles and the ethnic and the racial roles that had been established by custom. It gave them the language to say, we are traditional Americans. We are claiming traditional American history, and therefore we deserve inclusion in your democracy, which I think is just a really fascinating and important sleight of hand.